I'm always amazed at how succinctly Jesus is able to put things in the wisdom that he has. And I don't know why I'm amazed. I mean, he's God, but he says things so well. And there's always additional meanings even below the surface in the depth of what he can say. So what's one of the first rules that Jesus gives for managing conflict? He says in Matthew, "Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? First, take out the plank of your own eye, then you can see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." So Jesus' first rule of conflict, or at least one of the first, is to deal with our own stuff first. Now, what Jesus said is tough to do. And when I'm hurt, I react. I oftentimes don't react well. I react with contempt or criticism, blame, stonewalling. And so I'm never really surprised when I see couples react in the same way, because that just seems to be the way that we as people do this. Now, I've learned that I cannot control how others confront me. I can't control how my wife confronts me, and if she's willing to look at the speck in her own eye. But I can control my behavior, and I can control that I look at my own stuff first before I try to correct her. Now, my wife, Michelle, and I have gotten to be better at being able to have healthy behaviors by also examining our own attitudes. So the first attitude is to own my part. And this is difficult because when I'm hurt, I want someone else to change. And in my marriage, I want my wife to change. But Jesus said to look at yourself. You know, what are you responsible for? What is the plank in your own eye? So as mentors, we try to bring this up. We try to shift the focus from blame into, well, what are you responsible for? And there might be just a small part of each argument that each person's responsible for, but let's focus on that and look at, yes, I am responsible for this. So I have found that when I do this, and I approach my wife in this way, it's a much softer start, and it gets things off to a better place. So I might come up to her and say something like, you know, I realize that I am hurting you somehow, and I don't understand what that is. And so please help me to understand how it is I'm hurting you. I would like for us to work towards understanding one another and finding healthier behaviors. And that approach just seems to open up more understanding. So the first one is own my part. So number two is to put down the ledger. It says in 1 Corinthians 13, love keeps no record of wrongs. When we work with couples, we talk about this keeping no record of wrongs. It is tempting to keep this running ledger of who's ahead and who's not. And so in our head, you know, we think of all the positives that are done and all of the negatives, and we tally this up and say, you know, you do this, you don't do this, and then we keep score. And at the end of the day, guess what? Well, we win because it's our score. When we win, at least in our heads anyway, we start to think about what is right or fair, and it ends up minimizing our partner, and we tally up all the good deeds, and then we ignore or dismiss the good deeds of our partner. Now, I'm not saying there's not actual behavior that you might need to work through. For example, household chores is a very common area of conflict. And just because you feel that you need more help doesn't mean you don't. And there might be a way to work together to come up with a solution. But the issue here is, are you hanging on to the score? Because that ledger builds up resentment. That resentment causes distance. So the issue is, are you hanging on to it, and are you keeping score or not? So put down the ledger. 3 is understand the intent. See, the challenge is that we judge others by their actions, and we judge ourselves by our intent. So somebody does something that hurts us, and we say, you're trying to hurt us. When we do something that hurts somebody else, we think, well, I didn't mean for that to hurt you because my intent wasn't bad. Therefore, the action wasn't bad. We were speaking with one couple in a group, and they had fallen into the trap of judging each other by their actions. And the result is they had a number of misunderstandings and a great deal of disconnection and distance from each other. So in our meeting, I asked them when something came up, I said, was that your intent? Did you intend to do them harm? And they said, well, no, I didn't mean it to come out that way. I I was just kind of trying to express myself. And when they started to get that their intent was not to harm each other, rather it was misunderstandings in the actions, they were able to better work for understanding of one another and then to resolve specific issues. So tips for mentors. Ask each person what they're responsible for. And we will frequently ask them that in this given interaction, what's your part? What do you own? And, they sometimes don't like to hear that, but when they can say, you know what, I probably overreacted or I didn't react very well, it softens the conversation because they're owning their own responsibility for it. So 1 is ask each person what they're responsible for. 2, focus on the intent. Most couples aren't trying to hurt one another. They just are misunderstanding and reading into each other. So we say, was your intent really harm? And usually it's not. So focus on the intent and what is the good intent. And then 3, we'll ask, is ledger keeping really working for you? Is it really building you up or is it tearing you down? Does it build up resentment? Does it build up distance? When you keep score like that, is it helping? Is it helping you to resolve anything? Or is there something more that you could do to resolve the specific issues? So those 3 tips again, ask each person what they're responsible for, focus on the intent, and then ask them, is really the ledger keeping working for you or not? Jesus' words, very profound, focus on the plank in your own eye before you look at the speck in your brother's eye.